Many of us are involved as leaders and board members of new or emerging nonprofits, whether working with the homeless, the environment, animals, children, or one of the many, many types of charitable organizations. Every new leader wonders, are we doing this right? Enter Renee McGivern and Nonprofit Spark. Each week, Renee and her guests walk through an area of nonprofit work in clear, concise, and practical themed shows. Whether it's about best practices, developing and keeping a volunteer force, fundraising, effective governance, or hiring staff, to name but a few, you can boost your nonprofit know-how and confidence. Renee and Nonprofit Spark have arrived.
Welcome to Nonprofit Spark, a show for leaders and board members of new and emerging nonprofits. Last week, the show explored how to keep high performers happy, and this week, we continue our focus on management. This time, we look at young professionals. What do you need to do to attract and keep them? Are you willing to try something new? My guest this week is Keenan Weller, a co-leader and director of communications for Live, Work, Play, a nonprofit in Ottawa, Canada. It supports people with intellectual disabilities in having a great life. He founded the organization with his wife, Julie Kingstone, in 1995, and since then, Live, Work, Play has become a very welcoming place for young staff members searching for meaningful work. On the show, Keenan describes 4 ingredients in making an organization the kind of place where young professionals thrive and stay. These may require a paradigm shift in how you operate, but it's a change worth undertaking if it results in a new generation of capable and passionate nonprofit leaders. Now, if you're curious about the transition that Live, Work, Play made in operating from a programmatic mindset to a social change point of view, listen to my interview with Keenan on the show, A Nonprofit Reinvents Itself, which aired the week of April 16th, 2012. I hope you enjoy this show. Welcome back to Nonprofit Spark, Keenan.
Oh, thank you so much, Renee. It's great to be here.
Well, Keenan, your office has become quite a welcoming place for young people. And before we actually talk about that, I just want to step back and set the stage a little bit. So tell everyone about Live, Work, Play, and what you do.
Sure. Well, it's been, I guess, about 18 years of the journey so far. But what we do now, as far as a mission statement, is we help our community welcome people with intellectual disabilities to live, work, and play as valued citizens here in Ottawa, but also definitely have a national and global perspective and try to influence trends worldwide.
Now, your team, about 5 years ago, shifted from what I would call a programmatic way of thinking to a social change thinking. And why don't you tell us a little bit about that, because that's part of setting the stage, too, for being a welcoming place.
Sure. I think really what took place is, like a lot of organizations, we went through the startup struggles and trying to get annualized funding and be stabilized so that we could, offer our supporters the comfort of knowing, yes, we will be there next year if you invest in us with your trust and hopes. And upon arriving at that, we started to have some mission drift, as often happens, where perhaps the check was directing us places where we didn't intend to go originally, and we just took a step back and said that it's wonderful, we've got some staff, we've got an office, things are looking fairly solid, but what's going on in terms of our ability to help people with intellectual disabilities live as included members of our community, and realize we built up quite a significant infrastructure that was in effect serving to keep them out of the community because they were very comfortable coming to our office and being in, quote, the program. And we realized, of course, this was never the idea of why we started the organization. And so we just said, how did this happen? How are we going to change it? And that's where we went in pursuit of the social change model.
How did it happen that, Keenan, that, you and Julie started the organization, you wanted to make a big difference. So how did it happen that it became something where your clients would come to you instead of being out in the community? Were you just sort of imitating how other or similar organizations were doing their work, or what?
I don't think that's exactly how it happened, except that the expectations of funders was that you would have a program, and that's what they fund. And so we were kind of led in those directions. And initially, we tried doing things as projects, and then you get these opportunities, and you go, oh, boy, we could have 4 staff if we did that. And, boy, couldn't we build a lot of capacity from that versus, constantly doing projects and trying to figure out how to keep our doors open. So I think definitely there are some financial influences and maybe a bit of ego too that, well, yes, it's a program, but we'll just do it better. It'll be a program that actually succeeds in helping people transition rather than kind of cementing their feet into a program. But, the research clearly shows that it doesn't usually work that way. If you take people out of the community, it's not usually the best way to teach them to be in the community. And sure enough, we added to the literature in proving that correct, and thus decided time to make a big shift.
Okay, so give us an example of sort of a before and after, so people understand how really significant this shift is for you.
Well, it could be anything from, we engage with people around housing and employment and their social lives. But, employment is a really interesting one, and this continues to be somewhat hotly debated, particularly when it comes to people with intellectual developmental disabilities or mental health issues, for example. The idea being that they're not job ready or some other phrase like that, and so you take them out into some vocational context and you give them work-like experience, and then this gets them ready for the workplace. But in fact, people who were coming to our employment workshops, and we also had started up some job-like opportunities. We had developed actually a woodworking shop where we were making signs and attempting to sell them to businesses around the community. So those were all good-hearted endeavors with the intention of providing people with skills so that they could then become employed in the community. However, all those environments are artificial. The business itself that we were running, the micro-business, was artificially sustained, through our other funding sources. And the program structure for vocational training, well, they're kind of exclusively immersed with other people with disabilities and not really getting any experience of what a real workplace would be like. So compare that to our new idea of what qualifies someone for work is when they come to us and they say, I want to work. And that's kind of our new perspective. Okay, you want to work, and let's go from there in terms of what have you done before, what do you see yourself doing. And while we do a little bit of work with the individual, most of the work we do now is turned outward. So where are the employers in the community we should be talking to that have an environment that's a great fit for this individual?
Yeah, so you're not like pulling them in to a certain place that you're operating. You're actually pushing them out towards employers, and you've made these strong connections to the employers. Hey, here's people with these skills. Quite a difference.
It's huge, and there's so much vocational training going on in our field, and it's almost like, we've somehow assumed as a social services agency that we would know what an employer would want and get a person ready for that. It's actually quite a ridiculous model when you think about it. So instead, now our employment support staff spends their time, out at a Rotary meeting or going to a business breakfast and talking and networking with employers. So what are you looking for? And, making those connections and saying, I think I know a person that would be perfect for what you do. And, that's how people really get jobs. They don't tend to get them through vocational training programs. I know, speaking for myself, work over the years before I came to be full-time at Live, Work, Play, it was all about, Fred told Joe that Keenan was a good guy. And, honestly, that's a big part of how people get jobs. And so we are trying to fill a little bit of that void, that social capital that tends to be missing for people who spend a lot of their lives separated and segregated, and so we're kind of filling that gap, at least for a short amount of time until people build their own networks.
Love it. Now, Keenan, when you went through this shift, it wasn't you and Julie sitting there figuring this out yourself, was it?
No, not at all. In fact, a lot of the important feedback came from the people we work with, their families, informing ourselves from what other agencies were doing, but really it was an entire team effort of we kind of had a staff retreat and said, what's going on here is, we're not all that happy. How do the rest of you feel about this work that we're doing? And it's difficult because it's not like, it wasn't that people were complaining. Like, we weren't getting individuals or families saying, we really don't like this day program. In fact, we were getting a lot of kudos for, this is a great day program. And then we thought, wow, we never sought out to have on our banner, this is a great day program. Definitely not our goal. So what's happened? And it turned out, universally, the staff would rather be doing something different and helping people live their lives. And So that was kind of the catalyst for it all. It started from there.
And when we look at your staff and the makeup of your staff, you and I were chatting, and it was about being a welcoming place for young people. So how is it that your way of operating makes your organization so attractive to young people, young professionals?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an attractive place for kind of energetic types that they want to hit the ground running and start making a difference. And I think that's why, almost everybody that moves into the nonprofit sector, I'm pretty sure that's somewhat like what they have in mind is, I've got an energy and a passion to make a difference in my community. And there tends to be a lot of barriers to that for people who are, what's described as the entry-level staff. I've heard over and over again, it appeared it would be years and years before I'd actually be a part of kind of the meaning-making group within this staff. And so that's very dissuasive, and people are lacking interest there. Whereas, with our organization, there just isn't a choice. You're going to have to be very quickly immersed in mission-oriented work and making decisions and decisions that impact on others. So if that's what you're looking for, this is a place you can find it, and that's why we're attracting those kinds of people.
Well, you're listening to Nonprofit Spark. I'm your host, Renee McGivern, and I'm speaking with Keenan Weller. He serves as a co-leader and director of communications for Live, Work, Play, a nonprofit in Ottawa, Canada that supports people with intellectual disabilities and having a good life. Okay, Keenan, let's keep going now. You have these young people on staff. It sounds like you're very horizontal in how you go about getting work done and making decisions. Describe a little bit about how they get involved, like from the ground running. And here's what I'm trying to get at, because I remember starting in a nonprofit. I'm getting in on the ground floor, but they had me doing clerical things. Do you know what I'm saying? It was like,
I absolutely do.
Yeah, so, and then I worked my way up. Now, I worked my way up quickly. I was fortunate that way, but I know that's not the case. I've seen many young people recently out of college the last 2 years, and that's what they're doing at nonprofits.
That's what I hear time and time again, and the sad thing about that is I also hear time and time again from leaders, and let's face it, mostly quite older staff members saying, gee, I really wish we could keep new people in our organization. So, just listening to the facts of people coming and going, and why are they doing that? Well, it's because I didn't join to do clerical work. I joined to make a difference. And so, yes, we just quickly figured out here, and on full credit to Julie Kingston, our Director of Operations, happens to be my wife, who really saw from a distance that we needed to move to a horizontal leadership model because there's just too much going on. We're involved in the lives of some 100 people and families and, 30 nonprofit partners, probably 30 employers in the community. This is not something one or two people can do in terms of, every decision getting funneled up that way. So it's obviously power sharing was a must, and we needed to figure out how to do it. And that's how we operate. There's a clear line where Julie and I have certain roles mainly to do with the board of directors, but as a staff team, there are, there's only 11 of us, but of those other 9 individuals, they are making important decisions on their own every day. And of course, these are within context and guidelines, and there's reporting and discussion. But in terms of the directions of the organization, at our weekly staff meeting, those individuals have the potential to make just as much impact as anyone else on reporting their findings and what's happening with the individuals they support in the community. So
when you're starting to create these outward focus relationships with corporations or whatever, you're not insisting it's you and Julie doing that because you're the ones that have been around since 1995. You're actually allowing other staff people to shape that program, run with it, and you don't care if they've been there for, 15 years or anything else. It's you let people run with things.
Absolutely. There's certain messages they need to master, and there's parameters to learn. And sometimes strategically, yes, if it's going to make a difference, if someone in the community has decided, I really need to meet with this person or that person, sure, we make it happen, because it's all about, building capacity and partnerships that benefit our members. However, definitely, again, on a daily basis, it's been a very good week around here, actually. There was a number of new employers, for example, who've come on board and said, yeah, we really want to work with you and employ a person with an intellectual disability in our workplace. And those were all leads that were not generated by Julie or myself.
As a baby boomer, I'm trying to get a handle on how a horizontal model works as opposed to a vertical one where you work your way up over time. I'm trying to get my head around it, Keenan. Give me an example of something where it's someone who's pretty young and they're really running with something, and they're finding meaning in their work as a result.
So we have 3 of our staff that are in a role we call Community Connector. So they're basically, outside of someone's housing needs, like inside their home, and outside of employment, so everything else in their life, that's kind of what they do. So they would help them if they were pursuing education, club, a course, working on friendships, that sort of thing. So, that's very individualized work. No one else is there to see what's happening with the client. And so when they come back at a weekly staff meeting and report on, we haven't had progress with, Joe for 3 months. We're not really being effective in supporting him. And typically, that staff member has come to that meeting with, I was thinking we could try these 3 things. And it could be a big or a small shift, Clearly, Mondays is not a good time to meet with him. Clearly, when his mother's in attendance, he doesn't want to talk. So it could be shifts of that nature, or something more radical in terms of, I had a conversation with him, and frankly, he doesn't actually want our support. We need to declare a vacancy and find somebody else that work better with him. And, I think that open and transparent communication with the people we're supporting is something that I just marvel sometimes at what people come up with in finding solutions.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with their age, does it?
Not at all. And, the fresh perspective and sometimes the most interesting thing is, I've been doing this for about 20 years, and I guess it's a little counterintuitive, but sometimes I'm the last person that should be trying to have fresh eyes on a situation. They need to be actually fresh eyes and not mine. And so I just welcome the opportunity that we have a team that looks at things that way.
All right, so it's important for these young professionals to find meaning in the workplace, and part of that, it seems to me, is that they're in on decision-making right from the start, because you have that team setting, and you get them up and running quickly. So that's one thing. Right. Now, when we were chatting before the show, you also mentioned how important technology is. Now, you're $1 million organization, and you seem to be willing to spend money on technology. It makes them efficient, and they expect it.
Absolutely. I think, and that was, I've done some of my own little formal and informal surveys. And this we've done a lot, actually, with our volunteer recruitment, because, over 120 volunteers make a huge difference in our organization. And one of the key bits of feedback we get, particularly from the younger volunteers, is they're pretty adept at understanding where a nonprofit is at in terms of their technology and just communications in general. Is it an interactive place? And they get that message from us doing their own research. The first thing they do is cruise around websites and see, are you on Facebook, are you on Twitter? And so I think for potential young staff recruits, it's a pretty similar process. They're not really looking to work somewhere where the computer on their desk is 15 years older than the one at their home, They want the technology, and frankly, it's a way for our staff to work harder. So I'm all for it. I don't want someone to have to drive a car for 40 minutes to get back to a reasonable piece of computer technology so they can enter a report. So they need the best of smartphones or whatever it is that's going to make it work for them, because they're out in the community and not at their desks all that much. And that's a positive outcome. But at the same time, we can't have people waiting to get home before they can file a report. So we're connected as a team. There are urgent situations, and we need to be able to reach each other and act coherently and quickly. So, we've had wonderful support from our board, throughout the past decade, and it's ongoing that in our community also. The people understand, those budget lines about technology. That's not a place where you look to whittle back to realize cost savings. That's a place where you invest because time wasted by staff is time not spent helping people.
Yes, it's refreshing to hear that, Keenan. I was always a believer when I was running a small organization in upgrading our computers all the time, the software. And at any one time, we'd have 3 of us working on it. It was really small. But I'll tell you what, because I kept investing in the technology and the latest things, we were able to do file sharing. We were able to work remotely. We were doing the work of 6 people. It was like literally our equipment, our technology actually made us so efficient, we could do double the work. And I still blanch when I walk into nonprofit offices now, and particularly social service agencies, and their technology is decrepit. And I wouldn't work there, and I'm in my 50s. It's not even I'm in my 20s.
I hear you. Yeah, it's heartbreaking, and those are some difficult conversations I know I've tried to have with some other leaders of nonprofits because, their staff are literally got their hands up like I can't get my work done.
Yeah, like sharing one printer among 12 people. I mean, it's just the stupidest. It just doesn't make any sense. It's just like, what?
Yeah.
So, all right, let me just pin you down a little bit when you were talking about social media. As far as you're concerned, social media matters, and organizations that get into it really need to be getting into it, not in a surface way, because young people pick up on that right away. It's like, no, it actually really matters. How are you using social media, and how do you think that impacts the young professionals that work with you?
Yeah, you make a good point. Naturally, people who use these things every day are pretty quick at picking up on whether or not you're genuine. So if you have Twitter, Facebook, etc., and someone posts on your page and there's not a response for 3 months or ever, they can see that and they'll move on. So, we didn't do it because it's something people were doing. It wasn't like when in the 90s when everyone, we better get a website, everyone has one. This is about what an opportunity. I think all of us as nonprofits, we have some sort of mission that has to do with changing the hearts and minds of people beyond the walls of our office. And therefore, isn't this fantastic that we can connect with networks of people that are associated with us and broaden our scope of influence and generate interest from strangers, which I think is just the most marvelous thing when you get a note on LinkedIn or even just an email from someone who's seen something on Twitter or Facebook, and they say, I'm a small business, but I do have this job, and I was wondering, you do have someone that could do this kind of work. And like, wow, a job lead from something I tweeted that's going to change somebody's life that we support. So, these are meaningful things. I think a lot of nonprofits that are still struggling with the decision, should we get involved with social media, because they don't seem to understand that these real meaningful outcomes are possible.
Well, and the young people that use it are automatically sharing, and they're posting on your Facebook page, and all of a sudden it's on their Facebook page, and that many more people hear about Live, Work, Play, and, there's all kinds of multiple benefits, and then sort of the bottom line is, look, this organization is with it.
Well, and we can't afford, major print media campaigns and things like that for reputation building. So, this is where a lot of our, certainly not just local, but certainly our local reputation building has come. We're, budget-wise, probably the smallest of 16 agencies that are more or less in the same field in this city of about 1 million. But I think it's clear that our reputation, we're top 3 in terms of who do people know about, and they probably have no idea that we're one of the smallest because we're actually out there selling our message of inclusion and making people aware of what we do and why.
All right, we're going to take a little break for a word from our sponsor. We'll be right back.
Clifton Gunderson and Larson Allen, two national accounting firms, have come together to form Clifton Larson Allen. The combined firm serves more than 5,900 nonprofit and government clients. You can call on Clifton Larson Allen for help with financial and compliance audits, tax preparation, temporary or full-time accounting assistance, and to develop proactive financial strategies for tough economic times. Clifton Larson Allen cultivates long-lasting client relationships so they understand the issues you've faced and the challenges ahead of you. Learn more about Clifton Larson Allen on their website at www.cliftonlarsonallen.com. Clifton Larson Allen, noticeably different.
Welcome back to Nonprofit Spark. I'm your host, Renee McGivern, and you can learn more about me on my company website at sparkplugconsulting.com. I'm speaking with Keenan Weller. He serves as co-leader and director of communications for Live, Work, Play, a nonprofit in Ottawa, Canada. It supports people with intellectual disabilities in having a good life. He founded the organization with his wife, Julie Kingstone, in 1995. And since then, Live, Work, Play has become a very welcoming place for young staff members searching for meaningful work. Okay, we've touched on how important it is for young professionals to be in a workplace where there's a team approach to problem solving, that they can find meaning and get up and running with responsibilities quickly. We've discussed technology. What else are young professionals looking for when they go and work for an organization?
I think opportunities for relevant and stimulating training, but also support that's I think more on the lines of coaching rather than dictating. I guess I'll phrase it that way. Obviously, there are things that are non-negotiable in any workplace, and you need to transmit that information and reinforce it. But I think in terms of the growth of the employee and their career, we've adopted a very strong coaching perspective, and which people appreciate, and that's the feedback that we're getting from them.
How does that work then? Where does it show up? Is it outside of a team meeting? Is it in a team meeting? What?
It's both, and so it's Julie that kind of schedules. She has a structured schedule of meeting with all staff members to have those types of interactions. But I think it takes place definitely at the weekly team meetings where everyone is reporting on their activities, and I guess that's another key feature. From the get-go, even as a new staff member, within a week you are, in fact, tabling reports on the same level as anyone else. So what you are doing is not only seen to be, but is, in fact, being approached of equal importance. So I think that's also something that people are sometimes surprised about. Oh, I'll be giving a report? Yes, you will, because the work you're doing is important, and the rest of the team needs to know what's happening in the lives of these individuals, because there's a lot of crossover, right? One person might be helping with employment, someone else is supporting them with housing, and being really effective, everyone needs to understand how those issues are overlapping and things of that nature. So the coaching comes into play just from seeing what the more experienced staff members are doing and observing and learning in that way. But then also more directly, I think what Julie correctly identified is you need opportunities where you're actually directly asking people what are the challenging things that you're experiencing right now. Because you can't just leave it out there, come and talk to me if you have a problem. We know that doesn't really work. People don't come forward. They don't want to bother the boss, yes. That sort of thing. So setting the time aside and saying, we've actually got, this hour, and this is all about how can I support you in doing the important work that you do, and what are the issues that you're confronting. I think that's critical.
I have a show this week on high performers and making them happy in the workplace, and that was one of the key things that she brought up, Keenan, was how you really have to ask employees what it is they want and what would make them happy. And so that was that focus. But really, Julie's saying the same thing here, actually asking them, how's it going? What are you confused by? What do you need answers to? How can I support you? And it isn't kind of the old-fashioned management, well, I'll wait till the performance review, or I'll wait until, they're really messed up in what they're doing, and now I'll talk to them.
Yeah, and I think a lot of those processes, they tend to send the message that the best thing to do is not complain about anything. that's the whole point of performance reviews, is for you to say that everything's going great, and then take some critical feedback. And I think, if you want things to be different, you have to work hard at it. And it's really building a trusting relationship that it's absolutely okay to say, you know what, this aspect of my job is really giving me fits, and I need some help with it, and not to get a response that, oh gee, I guess you're not competent. To get a response that, yeah, this is really hard work, and frankly, if you hadn't expressed something like this within the first 2 months of being here, then something's probably wrong. In fact, that is one of the key indicators around here. If something in this work hasn't given you fits within a couple of weeks, you're probably not doing it right, because it's very challenging.
Yes. That's really great, because it gives them the freedom to make some mistakes. It might not seem like a logical connection, but it sure lands with me that if I know that I'm really struggling with something, I can actually say, I think I blew it here. What would be a better way of doing this? Big deal. Let's just keep going with it. Let's problem solve together and keep moving. I'd rather have employees who are at least even curious enough to try something, maybe fail, propose something, and maybe it gets squashed down. Who cares? I'd rather have someone thinking for themselves, because it shows that they really feel responsible for, the clients they're serving.
You've hit on a key point, which is, reward for failure around here. People proposing and trying innovative things, because, we're working, it's human services here, so the answers are never found in a book. And, trying something 9 times with someone and succeeding on the 10th, well, it turns out no one's ever succeeded with this in the previous 28 years of this person's life. So the fact that you failed 9 times in a matter of 2 months, that you found a solution on the 10th try, and it's changed their life. So we have to encourage that environment and also lead by example with, the leadership has to show its own fallibility, and I think that's one of the challenges. I think some people figure, well, the reason I put in 20 years in this field is people would see me as perfect. And, definitely I'm not. Continue to make mistakes. And it's also a relief from a leadership position to be comfortable that, it's okay to show a newer staff member that, the boss makes mistakes. And that's part of our work, because we are trying things that have risk.
Yes, I like that. I'm fallible.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What a relief. Geez, that takes the pressure off, doesn't it?
My mother will be surprised, but yeah, it's true. Oh.
She thinks you're like the Pope, infallible or something. Anything else you want to say about nonprofits and young professionals that you've observed?
I think they really appreciate training opportunities and participating in conferences that are relevant. For example, that's another thing I've heard. After 3 years they'll get to go to a conference. Whereas here, very quickly we want people, depending on the type of work they're doing, we want them out mixing with other people in that field and getting exposure to best practices and helping understand where they are in the field and the importance of the work that we're doing. And we returned from a conference in New York City where that happened, and that was one of the most important pieces of feedback, was realizing, wow, we are really doing good work, and I see where we're situated and kind of the global perspective of our field, and just a lot of pride in knowing that sometimes when you're in a little agency in a little city in Canada, it's hard to place yourself. And I think people feel good about knowing that not only are they getting exposure to great training, but knowing that where they're at is in fact a good place.
It strikes me, Keenan, that you're spending money in all the places that a lot of nonprofits don't spend it, and energy. So one is social media, and then in a broader sense, then technology. And you're actually giving your staff smartphones, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So your computers work. You have smartphones. They're constantly connected. You're spending money on training of young people, which a lot of companies, for-profit nonprofits, have slashed any kind of training and travel budget.
Right.
So you're spending money on that. My gosh. And then, and then you have this team decision-making model. So you're actually spending time on coaching and supporting immediate action. It's like the polar opposite of where a lot of nonprofits are. And I imagine it might be polar opposite to how you used to operate, let's say, 10 years ago even.
Yeah, I think we always had a pretty vibrant and dynamic, staff camaraderie and all of that was always there. But, it was a lot of great people investing passions and good intentions into the wrong types of outcomes. And also, as a young person that started the organization, also kind of buying into a lot of things you were just talking about, that, gee, maybe we shouldn't have nice-looking stuff. Like, what will that say? What will the community think if I have a good computer?
Yeah.
They'll say things like, well, shouldn't you be spending that on people? And that still does happen. And I think that's why all of what we just talked about works hand in hand, and that we are very transparent in communicating that this is part of our culture here and explaining why. So that we're kind of out front in terms of dealing with objections like that might come. But the response is actually overwhelmingly positive. Most people in the public get very quickly that you don't want staff, taking an hour to boot up their computer. That's not actually helping people. So
no,
they get
it isn't.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Oh, the number of organizations I worked for. We were sharing a computer. Can I get on there now? It's just,
oh, God.
That's ridiculous. And constant breakdowns. The worst is the breakdowns of copy machines. And
yes.
Well, this has really been interesting. Now, Keenan, you're up for an award with the United Way in Ottawa. Why don't you tell us about that? Because that should be announced shortly.
Yeah, there's a big gala, I guess, June 6th, and we're finalists. It's a Community Builder of the Year award, and it's been created specifically to acknowledge individuals or organizations, and it's called Belonging to Community. And, I remember we were notified that we've been nominated and that we were finalists, and in reading what the award was about, I kind of thought, gee, they wrote this for us, because it's specifically targeted to helping a marginalized group such as people with disabilities to be welcomed in their communities, and it actually mentions housing, employment, and life in the community. So it's kind of what we do. So awards can be awkward. Sometimes in the charitable sector, people want to give you awards for strange reasons or things that make you uncomfortable, or perhaps even from perspectives, working with people with disabilities, sometimes there's a bit of a pity perspective. Oh, it's so good of you to work with those people. Oh, my gosh. Well, if you'd only known how much my life has been changed for the better as a result of having more diversity in my world. And so, but this award is definitely not the case, and we're really thrilled to be nominated, and be very comfortable accepting that particular type of award. So we'll see what happens.
Well, I bet you're going to win it. And best of luck to you on that. All right, if people want to learn more about Live, Work, Play, what's your website?
Yes, liveworkplay.ca, and there you'll find the links to our various social media channels, and you can actually get a hold of a real person if you tweet us or like us on Facebook.
Gina, there's one other question about young professionals that just crossed my mind. One of the questions that comes up a lot with baby boomer managers, or one of the things I hear them say is, you can't keep young people. They're here for 2 years, at the most maybe 3, and they leave. Is that true? Is it expected? Does it have to be that way? What do you think?
I was getting that message starting out in the 90s when I worked for a high-tech company, and there was actually almost a spin out there that this should be a positive thing. We're going to change careers 45 times. I really don't think that's what a lot of people are looking for. I think the reason they change careers so much is that they are simply bored, grow tired of it, or they hit barriers to advancement, so they look for other things. I guess time will tell. But people do tend to stay here, and we've gone through a number of people there's been marriages and mortgages and babies, and they're still here. So I guess that's a sign that longevity is certainly possible. And the cost of retraining people, not just the financial cost, I mean the emotional cost, I think HR is probably not what most of us, wanted to do when we got into the nonprofit community. And I think it's part of it is those coaching conversations and being aware of what people are looking for. So they must be leaving for a reason. And I think it's great to have the conversation. Well, what are the things that you're not getting here that you hope to find elsewhere? And kind of anticipating what people are looking for and giving them those opportunities. So there's a world of opportunities here. If people want more responsibility, we're happy to pass it along.
Okay, very good. Well, Keenan Weller of Live, Work, Play, thanks so much for being on Nonprofit Spark. It's been really fun.
Thank you.
Once again, you can learn more about Live, Work, Play by going online to liveworkplay.ca. And my last interview about the organization's shift to a social change model aired the week of April 16th, 2012. If your nonprofit is fairly new, it seems to me you can easily commit to making your organization a welcoming place for young professionals. And if you're with an emerging nonprofit, I hope you examine how you perceive and tap into the contributions of young professionals. One of the things that disappoints me about my own baby boomer generation is when I hear the managers say, "Oh, they're just kids, what do they know?" And "I had to work my way up, and so do these young people." Really? The only result of that attitude is a revolving door of discouraged young people from your nonprofit. Wouldn't it be a lot smarter to create a work environment that develops the talent of this new generation of nonprofit leaders? Here is how Live, Work, Play is set up to empower young professionals who clamor to be on the staff and then who stick around. 1. Give young professionals responsibilities right away that are meaningful to them and immediately impact the people you serve. They are at your organization to make a difference, so let them do that now. 2. Invest in technology. Young professionals are used to having updated computers, software, and smartphones, and they actually, and rightly, question the intelligence of leaders who are willing to work without these. This investment in technology also refers to the authentic use of social media. You can't fake it. 3. Use a team approach to problem solve, which supports horizontal leadership rather than hierarchical decision-making. Young professionals feel valued and hopeful in this team environment, and frankly, they're used to it. They grew up with parents who involve them in all kinds of decision-making, from daily meals to annual vacations. To them, it's bizarre that they don't have a say about the organization and their work in it. And 4, provide regular coaching and check-ins so young professionals are always learning from their successes and failures. This helps them gain confidence in thinking for themselves, and it helps you gauge what they still need to learn. Overall, a welcoming place for young professionals is a safe place where they can try, fail, and excel at doing meaningful work from the moment they walk in the door. Well, I hope you enjoyed the show. Follow me on Twitter at NonprofitSpark, one word, capital N, capital S, and email me with your comments and suggestions. My email is nonprofitspark@gmail.com. Have a great week.